So have you ever looked at like a colleague or maybe a friend from college or even just some complete stranger on the internet and felt this sudden visceral sinking sensation in the pit of your stomach?
Oh, yeah. Like, they just seem to have it all completely figured out.
Exactly. You see the announcement of their new job or like the photos of their perfectly curated living room or just the effortless way they seem to navigate relationships.
Mm.
And instantly this very specific, very quiet panic sets in.
It's a horrible feeling.
It really is. It's this panic that you are somehow, I don't know, missing the train, that everyone else was handed a map at birth, and you were still wandering around trying to find true north.
Yeah, like you missed the orientation meeting for life.
Yes, exactly. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking a really surgical look at an incredibly poignant, brief piece of writing. It's from a source titled Van Bun Duk Dan, which translates to pasted text.
Right.
And the title of this specific excerpt we're analyzing is Don't Chase Someone Else's Life.
Such a powerful title.
It is. And our mission today is to take this text apart, literally line by line, to understand, the psychological mechanics of why we fall into the trap of copying others. And more importantly, how we can actually dismantle that trap.
What's fascinating here is that this text operates almost like a diagnostic manual for modern existential anxiety.
Oh, I like that. A diagnostic manual.
Yeah, because it identifies this profoundly common human ailment, which is the illusion of the perfect external life. But it doesn't just stop at observation.
Right. It actually deconstructs it.
Exactly. It actively deconstructs the architecture of our social panic. It looks at the biological and psychological imperatives that, force us to compare ourselves to others. And then it offers a rigorously philosophical prescription for how to reclaim your own internal peace.
And that panic is exactly where the source text begins. The opening line just sets the stage perfectly. It says, sometimes we look at other people's lives and feel like we're falling behind. It's a very gentle opening. But then the author immediately hits us with this rhythmic, escalating sequence. They say they seem more successful, they seem happier, they seem to have everything figured out.
The repetition there is really striking.
Yeah, the repetition of that word seem is doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
It really is the operational hinge of the entire first argument. I mean, the author deliberately chooses seem rather than are.
Right, right.
And by doing this, they're highlighting the massive, often unbridgeable chasm between perception and reality. Because, we are cognitive misers by nature.
Cognitive misers. Explain that for the little listener really quick.
So our brains are designed to conserve energy. We rely on heuristics, which are essentially mental shortcuts. So when we look at someone else, we are not viewing their lived internal reality.
Right, we're just seeing the highlights.
Exactly. We're observing a highly curated projection. It's just a surface-level collection of data points. We see the title on their resume or the smile in the photograph, and our brain automatically fills in the blanks.
It assumes the rest of the picture is just as perfect.
Right. It assumes a corresponding internal state of unbroken happiness and total clarity. So the word seem acknowledges that our assessment of their life is fundamentally based on incomplete and honestly often entirely manufactured evidence.
It's like the architectural equivalent of a Potemkin village.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like, you're walking down the street and you see this beautiful, ornate structural facade. The paint is fresh. The windows are gleaming. The landscaping is immaculate.
Right.
And from the sidewalk, your brain interprets that as a fully functioning, luxurious building. But you have zero access to the interior. You don't know if the plumbing actually works.
Or if there's even a building behind the wall.
Exactly. You don't know if the foundation is sinking. You don't know if the rooms inside are totally empty or filled with mold, or if the people living there are totally miserable.
Yeah.
Yet your brain just takes that facade as absolute proof of structural integrity.
And that architectural facade is exactly how human beings operate in social hierarchies. I mean, we project structural integrity because vulnerability is historically dangerous.
Wow, yeah. That makes so much sense.
But the text is pointing out the cognitive error we make as observers. We look at someone else's facade, and we just assume their interior matches it perfectly.
Right. And then we look at our own interior.
Which we know is messy and anxious.
Right. Which we know is completely under construction. And we mistakenly compare our very messy reality to their highly polished projection.
Exactly. It's a completely unfair comparison.
But, okay, this is where I get tripped up a bit. Why is our default biological and psychological reaction to feel like we are falling behind?
Well,
Because, I mean, we don't exist in a vacuum, right?
Mhm.
Society is structured around scarce resources. If we see someone succeeding, like getting the promotion, buying the house, securing the social capital, they literally are acquiring resources faster than we are. So why does the text treat this feeling of falling behind as an illusion when in many realities it's a very tangible fact? We aren't just observing a facade. We are observing someone winning the game we're all playing.
That is the core tension of modern life right there. And it's exactly what the text is navigating. You are entirely correct that we are evolutionary creatures, right? We're wired to monitor our social standing.
Because it used to be a matter of survival.
Exactly. For our ancestors, falling behind in the tribe meant a loss of resources, which could literally mean a loss of life. Our nervous systems are still completely wired for that zero-sum environment.
So the panic is real.
The physiological panic is real. However, the text is identifying a fatal error in how we apply that ancient hardware to the modern world.
Okay, how so?
We mistakenly equate someone else's visible, highly specific milestones with an invisible universal race that we aren't actually running.
Oh, wow. An invisible race.
Yeah. The phrase falling behind implies a single linear track with like a universal starting gun and a shared finish line. The author is suggesting that while the socioeconomic game definitely exists, allowing it to dictate your internal metric of success is a trap.
So we think we're losing a race we never even signed up for.
Precisely. When you see their quote-unquote success, your ancient brain panics and screams, "I am losing the race." But the text asks you to pause and realize you aren't even on the same track.
We equate visible milestones with an invisible race. That completely changes the framing. Because if you believe you are in that race, the text points out exactly what you do next.
Which is to panic and move.
Right. The very next line in the text says, so we start running. It's an immediate physical transition from the passive act of observing, feeling inadequate, to a frantic state of motion.
And that word running, it really implies a profound state of physiological and psychological exhaustion.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this is not the running of an athlete who is training with purpose and joy. This is the running of prey.
Right. It's a reactive, cortisol-drenched sprint.
Exactly. It is the exhaustion of trying to catch a train that has already left the station while you're burdened by luggage that isn't even yours. When we operate from a place of perceived deficit, that feeling of being behind, every single action we take is tinged with desperation.
And the text actually details exactly what we're desperately chasing. It gives us this sequence that escalates in severity. It says, running after their dreams, their lifestyle, their timeline, their version of success.
Yeah, if we break down that sequence, we see a movement from the abstract to the deeply structural. First, we chase their dreams.
Which is wild to think about, chasing someone else's dream.
Right. It ties into the philosophical concept of mimetic desire, which was popularized by René Girard.
Oh yeah, mimetic desire.
Yeah, so we like to think our desires are completely autonomous, right? That organically want the things we want. But Girard argues that human desire is actually imitative.
We look at what other people want to figure out what we should want.
Exactly. We see someone admired for a specific achievement and we just absorb their dream as our own.
Right. And once we've adopted the dream, we have to figure out how to get it. Which brings us to the second item on that list, their lifestyle.
Yes.
Because if I want your dream, I assume I have to adopt your habits, your aesthetic, the way you spend your mornings, the way you dress.
The 5 a.m. morning routines.
Exactly. I start modifying my daily existence to mirror yours, assuming it's the exact formula for the success I just mimicked.
Precisely. You adopt the visible habits to achieve the borrowed desire. But then the text takes a turn into the architecture of how we measure our lives. Because the third thing we chase is their timeline, and the fourth is their version of success.
We've moved way beyond just wanting what they want at that point.
We are now adopting the very framework they use to measure the validity of their existence.
See, the timeline aspect is the most insidious part of this for me, their timeline. We aren't just stealing their goals, we're actively stealing their clock. Think about the implications of that for a moment for you listening right now. You were taking a stopwatch that was calibrated to someone else's stride length, someone else's financial background, someone else's neurochemistry, and someone else's sheer luck.
Yeah.
And you were clicking start and demanding that your life match those exact splits. It was a biological and psychological impossibility.
It is the ultimate recipe for chronic stress and burnout, because time is the medium through which we experience reality.
Right.
If your relationship with time is dictated by someone else's external trajectory, you are inherently misaligned with your own internal reality. In biology, we talk about circadian rhythms, the natural internal processes that regulate the sleep-wake cycle.
Oh, this is a great comparison.
Yeah, so when you try to force a night owl to operate on a strict early bird schedule, you create metabolic chaos. They become exhausted, sick, and frankly, depressed.
Because they're fighting their own biology.
Yeah, exactly. So stealing someone else's life timeline is the existential equivalent of disrupting your circadian rhythm. You are constantly rushing, constantly frantic, and constantly feeling like you are operating at a deficit because you're fighting your own organic pace.
It's like trying to sing harmony to a song when you are listening to a completely different tempo in your earpiece.
Oh, that's perfect.
You are always a half beat behind, rushing to catch up to the lyrics, and you completely destroy the melody because your entire cognitive load is dedicated to just matching a pace that isn't yours.
Right.
But see, that frantic attempt to match the pace leads directly to the core disconnect the author warns us about. Because there's a very real possibility that if you run hard enough and you sacrifice enough, you might actually catch up.
You might win the race.
You might win the race. And the text provides this devastating warning about what happens when you finally reach that finish line.
This is really the pivot point of the entire excerpt. The text reads, "But the truth is, a life that looks beautiful from the outside may not be the life your heart truly wants."
The tragedy of the beautiful but empty life.
It is a tragedy because it involves the sunk cost fallacy on a massive life-altering scale. The text makes a razor-sharp distinction here between aesthetic appeal and internal fulfillment.
Aesthetic versus internal.
Yeah. Looks beautiful from the outside is the realization of the facade we discussed earlier. You can successfully build the facade. You can get the job title, the zip code, the specific type of relationship that society absolutely applauds.
You can build an exact replica of the life you were envious of.
Yes. And you will sit in the living room of that beautifully constructed, socially approved life and feel this hollow, echoing emptiness because the architecture was never designed to accommodate your actual soul.
Right. I think about this like buying a highly specialized piece of equipment, let's say an incredibly expensive state-of-the-art deep-sea diving suit.
Okay, I'm with you.
You see a famous marine biologist wearing it, exploring these incredible oceanic trenches, discovering new species, and they look so fulfilled and successful doing it. So you spend years saving up, you buy the exact same suit, you put it on, and you realize you live in the middle of a desert.
Oh, wow.
Right. The suit is objectively magnificent. The engineering is flawless. It costs a fortune. But in your environment, for your daily reality, it is heavy, suffocating, and completely useless. It restricts your movement. It isolates you from the world around you because it was built for a completely different environment.
That mismatch of environments is exactly what the text is highlighting when it says, "may not be the life your heart truly wants."
Yeah.
And the heart here isn't just some romantic concept. It represents your core psychological needs, your intrinsic motivations, and your authentic temperament. And then the author follows this up with a sentence that acts as just an emergency brake on everything we've discussed so far.
Let's hear it.
You were not born to copy someone else's journey.
It feels like an absolution.
It really does.
It's the author grabbing you by the shoulders and giving you a permission slip to just stop running.
It functions as a pattern interrupt. The entire first half of the text describes this frantic, escalating loop of comparison, panic, and mimicry. You are not born to copy just stops the loop dead in its tracks.
Just halts it completely.
Right. It forces the listener to confront their own inherent biological and spiritual uniqueness. Mimicry is a survival mechanism for the vulnerable, right? But authenticity is the privilege of the self-actualized.
I love that.
The text is demanding that you stop functioning like a machine executing a copied program and start functioning like a conscious human being.
But, the author doesn't just strip away the illusion and leave us standing in the void, which is what makes this text so great.
Yeah, it offers a solution.
Because if we accept the premise that we aren't meant to copy others, we need a new framework. We need to know what to replace the borrowed dreams, the stolen lifestyle, the fake timeline, and the synthetic success with.
And the text immediately provides this four-part architecture of individuality. It says, you have your own path, your own pace, your own lessons, your own timing.
The repetition of your own is the specific antidote to the earlier repetition of they seem.
Oh, absolutely. We are moving from a state of external uncertain observation to a state of internal definitive ownership.
Let's break down these four pillars, because they really form an ecosystem of self-actualization.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
First, we have your own path. This refers to the actual topography of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
The specific direction you are heading and the unique terrain you are navigating.
Right, and the terrain is crucial here, because your path might be a sheer rock face that requires slow, meticulous climbing, while someone else's path is a freshly paved highway.
Exactly. You cannot compare the speed of a rock climber to the speed of a sports car,
You just can't.
which bleeds directly into the second pillar, your own pace.
Pace is the kinetic energy you bring to the path, and pace is dictated by 1,000 invisible variables, like your physical health, your psychological resilience, your financial resources, your family obligations, your past
All
traumas.
the invisible stuff we carry.
Right. Going back to the exhaustion of running, if you are carrying 50 pounds of unseen emotional luggage up a steep incline, and you try to match the pace of someone sprinting unburdened on a flat track, you will literally break your own spirit.
You'll destroy yourself.
Yeah. Acknowledging your own pace is an act of radical self-compassion.
That's beautifully said. But I want to park the conversation on the third pillar for a moment, because this is where the text does something incredibly subversive, in my opinion. Your own lessons.
Oh, I agree. It is the most philosophically rich word in the entire excerpt.
Because usually when things go sideways, when a business fails, when a relationship collapses, when we just hit a wall, we categorize it as a failure.
We think we did something wrong.
We view it as definitive proof that we have veered off the path or that we are losing the race we established earlier. We look at the person on the flat track who hasn't tripped and we think, I am broken and they are perfect.
Right.
But using the word lessons
Mm-hmm.
reframes the entire concept of hardship.
It really does. It implies that obstacles are not random punishments or, signs of inherent inadequacy. They are a customized curriculum.
A customized curriculum. I love that.
Yeah, so if you have your own lessons, it means the universe or your subconscious or just the realities of your specific path are generating the exact friction you uniquely need to experience in order to grow.
Right.
The person on the flat track isn't better than you. They just have a completely different syllabus. Like a math prodigy doesn't learn anything by repeating basic addition, right?
Of course not.
They only grow when they are confronted with complex calculus that initially totally baffles them. Your failures are your calculus. They are designed specifically for your intellectual and emotional expansion.
That is an incredibly comforting way to view failure. But again, I have to inject some reality here just for the listener who is internalizing this right now and trying to apply it.
Please do.
If everything is customized, if my path is unique, if my pace is entirely my own, if my failures are just specialized lessons, how do I ever know if I am actually making progress?
The big question.
Right. If we throw away the external stopwatch and the societal yardstick, what prevents this beautiful philosophy from devolving into an excuse for sheer complacency? Like if I'm sitting on the couch doing absolutely nothing, can I just claim, hey, this is my pace? How do we measure forward momentum when we've destroyed all the rulers?
It's a vital question. And it's true, when you dismantle external metrics, the immediate sensation is vertigo. You feel totally unmoored.
Yeah, you lose your bearings.
But the text is not advocating for stagnation. It is advocating for alignment. The measurement of progress shifts fundamentally. In psychology, we differentiate between extrinsic motivation, like doing something for a reward or to avoid punishment from outside,
Right.
and intrinsic motivation, which is doing something because it is inherently fulfilling. When you are chasing someone else's timeline, you are entirely extrinsically motivated by social validation.
You want the gold star.
Exactly. When you transition to your own path, the metric for progress becomes internal resonance.
Internal resonance. So it's less about velocity and more about alignment.
Precisely. You know you are making progress, not because you crossed a societal finish line before your neighbor, but because your daily actions are moving you closer to that state where your life is what your heart truly wants.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
You measure progress by a decrease in existential dread, an increase in moments of flow, and a deepening sense of integrity in your decisions. A compass replaces the stopwatch.
Oh, a compass replaces the stopwatch. I love that imagery.
Yeah. You might be walking slowly, but if the compass needle is locked onto your true north, you are making profound progress. And this brings us directly to the fourth pillar of the author's architecture, your own timing.
And the concept of timing strikes right at the heart of the deepest anxiety we open the show with, the fear of being late.
Yes, timing is where the author begins to dismantle our most deeply held insecurities about our worth relative to our age or stage in life.
I want to read the next lines of the text because they flow so naturally from this idea of timing. and they act almost like a pressure valve, releasing years of built-up societal stress.
Go for it.
The author writes, maybe you are not late. Maybe you are just walking a road that was meant only for you.
I want to focus on the rhetoric of that first word. Maybe. Maybe you are not late.
It's so unassuming.
It is a stunningly gentle approach. If the author had said, you are not late, it would feel like toxic positivity here.
Yeah, it would sound like a bumper sticker.
Exactly. But maybe introduces a crack in the foundation of your anxiety. It invites you to willingly suspend your disbelief about your own failure. It asks you to just entertain a paradigm shift.
It's like being in a claustrophobic, locked room for years, and someone slides a key under the door and whispers, maybe this fits.
Oh, wow.
They aren't forcing you to open the door, but they are offering you the possibility of a different reality.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. The text asks you to consider that your entire framework of lateness is a structural illusion. Let's look at the physics of lateness for a second.
Okay.
Lateness requires relativity. To be late, there must be a mutually agreed upon schedule, a shared destination, and an expectation of simultaneous arrival.
Right.
If you agree to meet a friend at a coffee shop at noon and you arrive at 1:00 p.m., you are late because you shared a timeline.
Right. There's an external agreement.
But if you are walking a road meant only for you, you are the only human being on that road.
And if you're the only one on the road, relativity completely collapses.
Yes.
There is no one to compare your position against. There is no one waiting at a predetermined finish line, holding a stopwatch, tapping their foot.
Exactly. If the road is solitary and unique, the concept of a schedule completely evaporates. You cannot be late to a destination that only exists for you, arriving at a time that is dictated solely by your customized pace and your necessary lessons.
Because you're the one setting the schedule by just existing.
Right. The fear of being late is entirely dependent on the existence of that universal track we debunked earlier. By accepting the singularity of your journey, the anxiety of lateness simply dissolves. You are exactly where you are supposed to be, processing the exact curriculum you need at this precise moment.
Intellectually, that is a flawless argument. It makes perfect sense. But practically, how do we implement this?
That's the hard part.
Because we are still going to open our phones tomorrow and see someone else celebrating a massive victory. We're still going to feel that initial twinge of comparison. How do we stop the habit?
Well, the text gives us a tool for that.
It does. It gives us one of the most striking, actionable, visual metaphors to combat this exact moment. It says, so stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20.
This is the chapter fallacy. It takes all the abstract philosophical concepts we've discussed about time, pace, and paths, and grounds them in a highly accessible literary metaphor.
And it functions as a cognitive behavioral tool, really.
It does.
Let's expand on this literary metaphor because it is incredibly vivid. Imagine walking into a bookstore and picking up a massive, sprawling, epic novel.
Yeah.
You bypass the beginning, you flip straight to page 400, and you read the climax. The hero has vanquished the enemy. They have discovered the ancient treasure. They are standing on the mountaintop looking majestic and fully realized.
Right?
Then you close that book, you pull a blank notebook out of your bag, you write chapter 1 at the top of the page, and you look at your protagonist, which is you.
Right, your own life.
Your protagonist is currently tripping over their own shoelaces, unsure of their quest, lacking resources, and making terrible decisions. And you become intensely angry that your chapter 1 protagonist doesn't possess the majesty of the chapter 20 hero you just read about.
Yeah.
It's an absurd expectation.
It is completely absurd. And what makes this specific type of comparison so uniquely toxic to the human psyche is the massive asymmetry of information.
The asymmetry of information. Explain how that works in this context.
So when you are living your own chapter 1, you have omniscient, unfiltered access to all of your raw data.
Oh, all the messy stuff.
Every bit of it, you know intimately, every single struggle, every moment of paralyzing self-doubt, every deleted draft, every embarrassing mistake, and just the sheer unadulterated messiness of your beginnings.
Right. You feel the friction of every lesson.
Exactly. But when you look at someone else's chapter 20, their public success, you are entirely blind to their raw data. You are only allowed to see the polished, meticulously edited, heavily curated final draft.
The highlight reel.
Yes. You do not see the years they spent lost in the woods. You don't see the business loans that fell through, the nights they spent staring at the ceiling in a panic, or the relationships that broke under the strain of their ambition. You are comparing your unedited behind-the-scenes footage to their cinematic highlight reel.
Which means we are holding ourselves to an impossible standard based on fundamentally flawed data.
Absolutely.
It's like comparing the blueprint of a house that hasn't been built yet, complete with all the erasure marks and structural calculations, to a fully furnished, professionally photographed mansion in a magazine, and feeling like a failure because your paper has smudge marks on it.
They are completely different stages of reality.
Precise.
And the author uses the word stop as a command because this specific comparison isn't just emotionally harmful, it is a logical fallacy. It is survivorship bias applied to social observation.
Oh, survivorship bias. That's a great point.
You cannot compare the exposition of one narrative to the resolution of another and draw any meaningful conclusions about the worth of either story. The text is providing a logical intervention to short-circuit an emotional spiral.
Okay, so we implement the intervention. We stop running the invisible race. We accept the architecture of our unique path, our bespoke pace, and our customized lessons. We stop comparing our messy beginnings to someone else's polished endings.
We clear the slate.
Right, this clears the slate, it empties the room, but we still have to live. We still have to make choices. This brings us toward the climax of the source text, which shifts from deconstruction to actionable construction.
Building something new.
Right. The text tells us how to build from the 0 point. It says, listen to yourself. Choose what feels honest. Build a life that gives you peace, not just applause.
This is the culmination of the author's prescription. The first half of the text was a demolition project, tearing down the facade of external validation and mimetic desire. Now, we are laying the foundation for a new structure.
And that foundation relies entirely on internal listening.
Yes. Listen to yourself is the direct, active countermeasure to the passive problem we started with, which was looking at other people's lives.
Oh, that's such a brilliant connection, looking out versus listening in.
Exactly. The text requires a complete redirection of your sensory and emotional attention. You must unplug from the external broadcast and tune into your internal frequency.
And the result of that internal listening is the ability to choose what feels honest. I find the use of the word honest here really compelling.
How so?
Well, honesty in this context isn't about telling the truth to a judge or a friend. It's about being rigorously authentic to your own internal architecture. When you face a decision, you don't ask, will this make me seem successful? You ask, does this choice align with my customized curriculum? Does this fit my inherent pace? Is this my path, or am I borrowing it?
Exactly. It's an honesty of alignment. And that rigorous honesty leads to the ultimate blueprint for the good life. Build a life that gives you peace, not just applause.
Right.
What is truly profound here is the deliberate contrast the author sets up between the concepts of peace and applause. They represent the two fundamental opposing motivations we've been unpacking for the last hour.
Let's put those two concepts under the microscope because they behave very differently. Applause is inherently loud.
Very loud.
It is a sharp percussive noise. It is also entirely temporary.
Yeah.
It echoes for a few seconds. It gives you a massive dopamine spike, and then it immediately dissipates into silence.
Probably leaving you craving the next hit.
Exactly. And crucially, applause absolutely requires an audience. You cannot generate applause in a vacuum. You are entirely dependent on the presence and approval of other people.
Which links perfectly back to the very beginning of the text. The life that looks beautiful from the outside. A life built for applause is a life constructed as a performance.
Wow, yeah, a performance.
And maintaining a performance is what leads to the exhaustion we discussed earlier. It requires constant vigilance, constant curation of the facade, and constant fear that the audience might look away or start booing.
Sounds exhausting.
It is. Peace, on the other hand, operates on a completely different neurobiological and spiritual wavelength. Peace is quiet.
Right.
It is not a spike of dopamine. It is the sustained low-entropy equilibrium of serotonin and oxytocin. It is a permanent, or at least a sustainable, state of being. And most importantly, peace requires zero external validation.
You can have it all by yourself.
You can experience profound, total peace sitting alone in an empty room. Peace is the internal state that naturally occurs when your external reality aligns perfectly with what your heart truly wants, regardless of who is watching.
But I have to ask, on behalf of the listener who is trying to live in the real world, is it inherently toxic to want applause?
That's a very fair question.
Because it feels good to be recognized for our hard work. We are social creatures, as we established. The text specifically says not just applause, which seems to imply that a little bit of applause is perfectly acceptable, all right?
Right.
He doesn't demand that we become hermits and abandon all societal recognition.
That is a very astute reading of the text, and it highlights the vital nuance in the author's philosophy. The inclusion of the word just is critical.
Right, not just applause.
Applause, recognition, validation, celebrating milestones with your community, these are deeply human, wonderful experiences. They foster connection. The danger the text is warning against is not the existence of applause, but the prioritization of it as a metric for decision-making.
The prioritization, meaning it's about what drives the action in the first place.
Precisely. Applause becomes a toxin when it replaces honesty as the foundational building block of your life choices. If you choose a career, a partner, or a lifestyle solely to elicit the applause of your peers, you have placed yourself back in the tailored suit meant for someone else.
You are back in the cage.
Yes, but if you do the hard work of listening to yourself, if you make a choice that is rigorously honest to your path, and that choice brings you internal peace, and then as a byproduct, society happens to applaud that choice, that is a beautiful bonus.
The cherry on top.
Exactly. But the applause is the echo. It is not the source of the action.
The applause is the echo, not the source. That completely reorients how we should interact with validation.
It really does.
It's the difference between becoming an actor solely because you crave the standing ovation versus writing a piece of music in your bedroom that helps you process your own grief. And later, someone hears it and tells you it healed them, too.
Exactly. The core motivation was peace and honesty. The applause was just a pleasant reverberation.
The text is urging us to meticulously calibrate our internal compass toward peace and to treat applause as mere background noise, pleasant when it happens, but completely irrelevant to the directional signal of our lives.
Yes, exactly.
This brings us to the final, synthesizing lines of the text. Let's recap the massive philosophical journey we've taken the listener on today.
It's been a journey.
We started in the thickets of modern anxiety, feeling behind as we stared at the curated window dressing of other people's lives and mistakenly assumed their reality was flawless.
Right.
We dissected the deep biological exhaustion of running a race we didn't sign up for, stealing someone else's timeline, and trying to function in an environment not meant for us.
Wearing the heavy diving suit in the desert.
Exactly. Then, the text provided us with the liberating realization of our own architecture, the acceptance of our unique path, our specific kinetic pace, our highly customized lessons, and the understanding that we cannot be late on a road built only for one.
Because the concept of late just vanishes.
Right. We dismantled the chapter fallacy, learning to stop comparing our raw, messy data to their polished highlight reels. And finally, we arrived at the ultimate operational mandate, prioritizing the quiet sustainability of internal peace over the loud, fleeting addiction to external applause.
It is a profound, total transformation of perspective. It moves the locus of control entirely from the outside world back to the individual.
And the source text leaves us with this final, beautiful distillation of everything we've just discussed. It says, because the most meaningful life is not the one that impresses others. It is the one that finally feels like your own.
As we conclude, I want to direct our attention to one specific, easily overlooked word in that closing sentence.
Which word?
The word finally. It is the one that finally feels like your own.
Why does that particular word hold so much weight for you in this context?
Because it acts as an acknowledgement of the profound difficulty inherent in this entire process. The word finally implies a long duration of time. It implies a struggle.
It doesn't happen overnight.
No, not at all. Reaching a state where your life truly feels like your own is not an overnight transformation you achieve just by reading a quote. It is a long, arduous, often painful journey of systematically shedding the outside expectations you were raised with, dismantling the false timelines society handed you, and breaking the addiction to the applause you've relied on for your self-esteem.
It's a lot of work.
It's immense work. By using the word finally, the author is validating the struggle the listener might be in the middle of right now. It is a hard-won victory to arrive back at yourself.
It's an unlearning. We
Yeah.
spend the first 2 decades of our lives learning how to mimic, how to fit in, how to read the social hierarchy, and how to run the race.
Right.
The process of becoming a self-actualized adult is actually a process of stripping all of that accumulated conditioning away.
It is an excavation of the authentic self. You aren't building something new. You are clearing away the debris to find what was always there.
Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over as we close out this deep dive, something that builds directly on top of the philosophical foundation this text has provided.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
We are conditioned to believe that building a meaningful life is a process of accumulation. We think we need to add more money, add more status, add more achievements, add more applause.
Right, more, more, more.
But if a meaningful life is simply one that finally feels like your own, does that mean true success isn't about adding anything to your life at all? What if success is actually the disciplined act of subtracting?
Oh, wow. Subtraction.
Yeah, subtracting the expectations, the borrowed dreams, the false timelines, and the need for applause that you have been carrying around exhausting yourself with. Things that never actually belonged to you in the first place.
Success is an act of subtraction. That is a brilliant reframing of the modern human condition.
It changes the entire objective of the game. You don't have to go out and find your life. You just have to stop running after everyone else's long enough for your own life to catch up to you.
That's a beautiful way to end.
Thank you to everyone out there for joining us on this deep dive into Van Bundan. We hope you take a moment today to put down the stopwatch, to tune out the applause, to listen to the quiet truth of your own pacing, and to remember that the only road that matters is the one you are walking right now. Take care, and we will catch you next time.